And away we go. It is the aftermath. Live from the Cincy Light Studios, right here on BearcatJournal.com. This show, a service of Mio's Pizza. Anytime you're up on Short Vine, anytime you're in Clifton, make sure you stop by, see our good friends at Mio's, have a nice cold drink, get some great pizza. They've got great subs, great appetizers. The pretzel bites are a favorite of mine. They will get you taken care of. And, of course, while you're there, get yourself some ice cold Cincy Light. All right, Keegan. The Bearcats fall 20-13 to TCU in a winter wonderland. It was, you could probably affectionately refer to that as the snow globe game because it didn't really snow hard. But for the entire second half, you at least had the optics of the snow. It accumulated a little bit on the field, but Cincinnati does not get the job done. They do not make bowl eligibility. Last I checked going into today, the odds that there were open slots for bowl eligibility were very slim. The number of teams that needed to win their sixth game was in the single digits. I don't know the answer to that question if there are going to be spots available, but it was trending in the direction of there not being any bowl slots eligible for this season. So Cincinnati likely not to go bowling. And coming to an end, a season that started very promising, 5-2. Looked like the Bearcats were in position to go bowling. Honestly, it felt like those odds decreased significantly when they lost to West Virginia, a game that they should have won. Let's just keep it honest. They should have won that game. They did not find a way to win. They found a way to lose. Unfortunately, that has kind of been the theme of the back half of this season, although if you look at the Colorado game, if you look at the Kansas State game, they were outplayed in those two games pretty clearly. The others, not so much. They also, and while it was with a backup quarterback in Jeff Sims and not Sam Leavitt, they also did beat the team that is sitting atop the conference and going into the conference championship game. But they didn't do it enough. A lot of it was self-inflicted. I think that is the part that has everybody up in arms, frustrated, angry, whatever you want to call it. But Keegan, 20-13 is the final. The season comes to an end, the regular season at least, and I don't think there's any chance. I don't see the bowl game thing happening, given the number of teams that were close. Apparently, if Hawaii beats New Mexico, so it is down to like a one-game thing. If Hawaii beats New Mexico, we could make a bowl, as Neil says. Neil Slayton. Hi, Neil. Good to see you.
Or so as I was told on Twitter.
Look, if it was on Twitter,
it's true.
What could possibly? Yeah, it's absolutely true. Keegan, give us your thoughts, your takeaways, your observations from another, let's just be honest and call it what it is, another frustrating night at Nippert Stadium.
Could be Purdue.
Yeah.
66-0, 586 yards to 67, 1-11. But I digress. That's just me getting in my Purdue jab. It was it's all summed up in the Jamoy Mays punt.
Right off the bat.
Like, just the continual inability to make the routine plays. And, this team handed the opposition touchdowns week in and week out all season. West Virginia interception, the end of the half against Kansas State, and then that one, and I'm trying to think of what the Iowa State one was. There might not have been an Iowa State one, which made that game half close at the end. Or wait, no, it wasn't. It was like 34-13. But it's just the worst possible play of the game always kind of happens to Cincinnati, and you're unable to get your momentum back. Like a 3-and-out. You get a 3-and-out against one of the most high-powered offenses in the country.
And they looked bad.
Yeah.
In that first three, the balls were nowhere close. The cold was clearly affecting them. The cold affected that offense the entire game, exactly as I said it would. I mean, they're just not. They were ripe for the pickings, and right from the start, Keegan, what is he thinking? Touching that football,
it was worse than Braden Smith last year.
Yeah,
at BYU. And that's saying something, because that Braden Smith play was one of the worst things I'd ever seen on a football field. And just the fact that I can say that in 2 consecutive years point to those kinds of plays as being a huge difference. And then at the end, and I don't think this was looked at as much, but they bring in Haas Haney, which, I mean, #1 football name I've ever heard. Maybe General Booty, that might be #1, but Haas Haney's pretty good.
Silverberry Muhan was that was a good one.
But they bring in Haas Haney, and I'm listening to Dan in my ear, and Dan just says he's going to run the ball, and he runs the ball 4 times in a row for a first down and like 30 yards on that last drive. So that costs you 1, field position, and 2, about 45 to 50 seconds off the game clock.
Yep.
Of them just running straight power left, straight power up the middle. So it's kind of just like the easy plays, and then the interception as well. I'm just like racking my brain of all the plays. I took a screenshot of that play of like the initial routes that they ran and set it after. Like, we all bunched inside and then we tried to go out. And my first thought is, why would you try to do a long developing pass play when you're already struggling to stretch the ball downfield against man coverage?
Maybe it was just nothing else was like, we're trying. I'll give them credit for trying something different, I guess.
But they were all like within 4 yards of each other in the middle of the field, outmanned 7-5, as you pointed out when I showed it to you after the game.
Yeah. When you showed it to me, the first thing I did, look, how many times football is a numbers game? Like, if you have numbers in the box, you run. If you have numbers, like, you pass. Like, it's a numbers game. And they ran 5 guys inside of 7. And I guess the hope is somebody sneaks out of there and finds themselves open, like in the confusion. Like, that's the design of that play. That's what you're aiming for. But then Sorsby has to know, Keegan, he's not open. There's a guy over the top and underneath. He's not open. It's got to go out, away.
There was a window for the perfect pass. And that's basically what Brennan probably thought, was if I can make the perfect pass, then this can be a touchdown. But it's not where this offense is at the moment. Like, it has to be high margin of error in order to be able to complete a pass. And it's like, it was basically, I don't know if that was the route he was supposed to run, or it's basically just get open, because when I watched the playback, it looked like they all just ran all out, like, in the end zone. But like, Jamoy runs in the corner of the end zone, and he's running in between 2 defenders. Like, he had a defender on each side of him just to the corner of the end zone. So I don't know. It was there was just a lot of super questionable stuff. And then the last drive before the half, you just run on 3rd and 10, punt it away, when you could have just get a field goal and then you get the ball out of the half. I feel like there's just there wasn't enough of a, hey, we need to try to score on this drive. Like, it is uber important to score on this drive.
For momentum, if nothing else. Just and you also, like, they got lucky that the field goal was missed. You also put them in a position to score again. Yeah. And look, we've said this before. I love Mason Fletcher. He has been an absolute soldier for this program for 4 years. Something wasn't right. Once he had 5 kicks, 5 punts, and averaged under 40 yards. You lost valuable field position on multiple punts again. Like, somebody's got to do right by him. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think you're doing right by Mason. And I know, knowing how tough Mason is, knowing how much he loves this university, he wants to go out there and help. But if he's not able to help, somebody has to have that conversation with him of, Mason, we're not, this isn't like us thinking less of you. This is, we have to win this game. And we can't give away 10, 15 yards of field position at a time 5 times. I mean, there were multiple times where they had a chance to pen them deep, and instead they're getting it at the 20, at the 25, at the 30. And Cincinnati's getting it at the 3, at the 1, at the 7. Like, those are the type of things that change football games, that win football games. And unfortunately, like, it wasn't something, it was new. It was something we saw for a month, unfortunately, with Fletch, where he just, for whatever reason, wasn't able to get the hang time and the distance that we had saw him get for 4 years. And, you know, you're trying to, in this league, you have to win games in the margins because everything is so bunched up. Everything is so close. Everything, unless you're Oklahoma State, everything is such a fine line between winning and losing in this league that the little stuff like that, special teams, look, I don't know. I mean, I obviously know what the answer probably is. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, I don't really know how to approach it because you have to bring in a conversation about somebody that has been very good for this university for a long time in Carey. Hi, David. For a month, special teams is one of the primary reasons that they lost their last 5 games. It was. I mean, they lost. They got dominated in field position. You score a touchdown, you kick the ball out of bounds on the kickoff. It's little stuff like that that over and over again, as it adds up. 10 yards here. Like in the micro, it doesn't seem that big. But Whiteland, zoom out, 10 here, 20 there. The blindside block in the first quarter. That was a
I thought
hit, by the way.
He didn't move for 15 seconds.
I thought he was dead. It was
bad. Yes.
Crushing. Dan Horde kept a log of special teams.
Yes.
Mistakes 8.
Dan was incredulous on the broadcast. I've never heard him that bothered. It was,
you have but you know, in this league, you have to figure that out because the more and more you give away free yards and you give away field position, you are decreasing significantly the odds you're going to win in a league where everything is a 1-score game. And everything just about was a 1-score game.
Yeah, after the free kick out of bounds, they were in the red zone within 3 plays, I think.
Right.
Like you're just putting yourself at such a disadvantage. Like TCU average drive start was their own 37. Cincinnati's was their own 18. At one point, it was 42-21 during the game.
It's impossible to overcome when it's that frequent. When it's that, you know, you've got too many men on the field, or a guy jumps off sides, or there's a false start, or, you know, there's a holding penalty, or the guy muffs the punt, and then you're afraid. You know, Sat was furious about this in the post game. Then all of a sudden your guy's afraid to try to catch a punt, and then the ball lands and bounces 15 yards, and there's 15 yards that you lost because you didn't fair catch the punt because you screwed up earlier in the game.
I don't think DJ Taylor fielded one punt in his 2 years at Cincinnati, and he was
the number one
all Pac-12 returner the last year before he transferred to UC. Also, back to the Mason thing. It was kind of interesting that when I asked Sat, like, what's the biggest change that needs to happen for special teams too, the first thing he said was Max has been good in practice.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, like you guys had something to play for the last 2 games. You guys had a lot to play for. You could have flipped a lot of momentum going into the next season, even just winning one, just getting to a bowl game.
Yep.
And you I don't want to say you're choosing to go with someone who you know is not as productive, but just from the product on the field.
Something was off.
Yes.
With Mason. Yeah. Something was off. That is not the guy we watched for 3 years.
Yeah.
Even last year, as he played through the sports hernia, he still had hang time. The kicks were 43 yards. Like, you know, it was like he was back, like in the metronome thing. His kicks the past month have been low line drives. They have not been directionally where they were supposed to be more often than not. I mean, they're allowing returns. That's something we didn't see for 7 years. From Jimmy through the first 3 years of Mason, we never saw punt returns because they had the hang time. The gunners were there. Fair catch. Go about your business.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just so many like little things. The other thing, Keegan, that they have to figure out in this offseason is the passing game. Because last year it was bad. This year it was good for 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
5.
And then it was essentially
Tech.
It was essentially non-existent after that. Satterfield clearly knows how to game plan a very good rushing attack. If you can't mix it with a great passing attack, it doesn't do what, you know, it creates situations where you struggle on third down, you struggle to consistently put pressure on an opposing defense. We saw anytime a team dropped 8, like they just didn't have the whatever it is, be it guys that were getting open, like maybe they recruited guys that were better off playing against man coverage. They got a lot of zone coverage. Guys weren't able to, you know, find those open spots in the zone like we saw other teams do every time they played Cincinnati, and Cincinnati would drop 8 and they would find guys open in the zone. TCU did it a number of times tonight. But offensively, they have got to figure out a better way to go forward with this passing attack that is more effective, because it felt like this is what it, and maybe this is the, you know, the basketball geek in me, but you see this a lot in basketball where you come out the first couple weeks, they change quarterbacks, so the passing attack was a lot different than last year. And then once you put 3-4 weeks on tape, opponents adjust. They say, okay, this is what they're trying to do. We're going to adjust. And then you have to find something that beats the adjustment. And it felt like, Keegan, they never were able to do that, whether it was inconsistency with Sorsby, whether it was wide receivers not getting open, whether it was not running route combinations that created these opportunities for guys to be open. Like, you go down the list, and whatever it is, the passing attack went from a major threat, 250 plus yards, multiple touchdowns through the first half of the season, to under 200 yards, sometimes under 100 yards, no touchdowns or one touchdown. Like it
was completely ineffective. It was completely ineffective.
That tells me the defense took what they did in the beginning of the season and said, okay, we're going to take these elements that we found to be the biggest threat, the biggest weapon. We're going to take that away, and we're going to make them beat us with something else. And this offense never delivered the something else.
Yeah. It was crazy. And Craig Moore asked, and I just looked for it, so we're on the same page, but I don't think they have a passing game coordinator. I'm pretty sure Sat just kind of umbrellas that under his responsibilities as just the offensive mind. Like, I don't know
if
that, I don't know.
I mean, if that's the problem, then you got to bring somebody in.
Yeah.
And you got to bring somebody in to take your passing game to the next level, because the running game is going to be there. That's the one thing that I'm confident about after seeing 24 games with this coaching staff. They are going to effectively run the football. The other stuff needs to fill in around that. Nick, thank you for the donation. I know they're not firing Sat this year, but his seat at least hot now. I disagree with your second statement. This team did not quit on him. The team that I saw play today absolutely did not quit on the coach.
No. I wasn't at the Kansas game last year, but I'm assuming it was different.
That was a team that had guys that felt like they quit.
Yeah.
This team, I have not gotten that feeling at all. They got their ass kicked by Kansas State. But they were within 3 points of Iowa State with 5 minutes left in the game. Iowa State is going to the Big 12 championship game, depending on the final of this BYU-Houston game. BYU's up 11. If BYU wins, Iowa State goes to the championship game. They beat Arizona State, who's in the championship game. They were within 3 points of Iowa State with 5 minutes left. Those are going to be probably your two teams that play for the Big 12 championship. That is not the sign of a team that quit. Now, sometimes you just get your ass kicked. Against Kansas State, they got their ass kicked. If this was a team that quit, Nick, they would have fumbled that opening punt, and at some point it would have been 45-10 TCU.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened. So I fight back against that, because I do not see a team that threw in the towel. I see a team that couldn't get out of its own damn way more often than not. Turnovers, special teams, penalties. And we've talked about this plenty, Keegan. I feel like it's always something different outside of these last 4 games. Special teams was bad. All of them. That felt like a constant over the 5-game losing streak to end the season. But other than that, like, one game it's penalties, one game it's turnovers, one game it's wide receivers can't get open. One game, today there were a bunch of drops where I thought Sorsby threw some good balls today, right where they needed to be, right through guys' hands.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Andrew, you don't want to do this with me. I'm not giving anybody excuses. It falls on the head coach. Absolutely it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying these are the things that happen. And the response is in reply to somebody asking if the players quit. I did not see a team where the players quit. I see a team that consistently did not allow itself to be in position to win games.
Don't. Don't do it.
It was good to see Amy today. It was good to see you today. Do I think they do anything about special teams now that the season's over? It was such a problem, Jeff. It became such an issue throughout the entire special teams. Kickoffs, punt return, kick return, punt coverage, kick coverage, field goals, punts. Like, it was such a problem over the last month that I don't think it can be ignored. Like, even if Carey stays on as a corners coach, I think somebody else has to take over special teams. Like, he has 1 year left on his contract. Again, he has done an incredible job for this university. But when you're just talking about the black and white, when you're just talking about what we saw special teams implode. And when you see a unit implode, the answer is trying something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And what happened over the final month tells me there needs to at least probably be a new voice in that special teams room. How many linemen are they losing this year? So the guys that walked today were Kandra, Tinsley,
Williams,
Wilder, and John Williams. Gerhardt didn't walk.
Buford,
so that would
back.
Buford didn't walk. So those two guys have potential to come back. I know they're definitely going to be looking at the portal for a couple offensive linemen. Jonathan Harder played some this year. He'll be back. Evan Tengistal played some this year. He'll be back. I know they're pretty high on Ethan Green, who had a really good year backing up at tackle. Fortunately, didn't need to see him. Xavier Lozawicki will be back. So they'll have some pieces to play with. And if they do, if Gerhardt does come back, at least you answer your question at center, and then you can kind of build with all your other pieces from there. Honestly, the biggest loss on this team, just in terms of what we know right now, might be John Williams.
Yeah.
Because he put together an awesome senior season. Like, I don't remember really talking about him getting beat more than once or twice.
Let me pull it up. Pull it up, Jamie. Offense, pass blocking. John Williams had a 78.2 grade per PFF. Wait, no, that's not season. He had a 86.5 pass block grade per PFF this year, which is highest.
Outstanding.
Right behind Kandra, who's doing it as a guard. So it's not as difficult as being a tackle. So yeah, that is going to be something that Sorsby could kind of just be confident on that left side. And now it's going to be a thing you're probably going to have to think about, or at least worry about replacing, which is, it's never good.
What about this new defense? Is the 3 down the answer? Do we have the players to play it? Connor, the number 1 defense in this league for a decade running runs this defense. So, yes, I do think running this defense can be the answer. I also think it's important to note that their defensive coordinator left after the portal closed. And you brought in Tyson Veit into a situation where the only chance he had really to shape this defense the way that he wanted it was in the spring portal. And there's just not a lot, unless you've got a bunch of money, there's not a lot in the spring portal that he could have done to drastically change what this defense looks like. This defense is very good if and when they get it up to the level that they want to call it, because we have seen it has been statistically the best defense in the conference at Iowa State for years and years and years and years and years. I think this is the 8th or 9th year that Iowa State has run this defense. I think they've been the best defense in the league 6 times. So I know for whatever reason, people lose their mind about 3 down linemen. It's how college football is played. It's how football is played in 2024. So do I love rushing 3? No, but I think they felt that they had to do that to protect the back end, because they don't have, one of the things that has made Iowa State great is that they have great secondaries. And I don't think they have the talent there yet to be as good as, this defense is designed to be. You need, think of it like this. The secondary has the most guys on the field. There's 3 defensive linemen, there's 3 linebackers, there's 5 members of the secondary. So you have to get that up to speed, and they know it. Like, this isn't a surprise that they need to be better in the secondary, but I thought they were significantly better this year than last year.
Not a high bar at all, but
yeah.
I just think when you have the 3-3-5, obviously you have to have really, really good pass rushers just to try to do something. And I just don't think they had that outside of Dante Corleone with the injuries. I think Micah Coleman would have made a big difference. And then Jalen Hunt being that second level after Dante would have also made a pretty big difference. So you're kind of trotting out Cam Rutherford, who was a good athletic, twitchy guy to get out of the portal, but I don't think he was expected to be a first-line guy. And then you have a true freshman in Marquez Parker, who's all of a sudden playing 25 snaps a game. And Darian Varner, who definitely has a role, but again, not expected to be a first-line guy. So you didn't have your first wave of defensive linemen, even the defensive linemen that Brian Brown wanted here, who he recruited here, not necessarily who Tyson Veit says, this is what I need in this scheme. So you're kind of fighting an uphill battle, but even so, I think the defense kind of got better as the year went on. They put UC in a position to win games, except for Kansas State.
And Colorado.
Yeah. But that wasn't the defensive line.
No. Look, I think it's a, like, for some reason, football fans have decided they hate 3-down linemen, like, across the board.
I mean, pass rushers are fun.
Yeah, they complained about the 3-man rush. But teams are, it's not 1975 anymore. Teams are putting smaller, faster wide receivers and running backs all over the field. If you do not adapt and have guys on the field that can cover them, if you have 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers or 2 linebackers on the field, then you're short at what you need to do in covering in space, playing in space. And today's game is played in space. So that's where the 3-down linemen come from. Again, it's not the number of guys that are D linemen. It's the number of guys your coaching staff commits to the box. And Cincinnati did not commit many guys to the box in a lot of situations this year that I thought they should have. But I don't have to make that decision with the knowledge of we don't have the guys on the back end that are able to fully execute what they're trying to do. And a lot of that, I think, is, safety. Again, they knew they needed to revamp the safety room, but they did almost all of that before Veit got here.
Yeah.
So now they got a bunch of guys that he's got to, trying to fit into something that they weren't necessarily recruited for. And, I thought Canteen and Minkins were both quality gets, but it felt like as the season went on, we saw less and less of those guys popping up, making big plays.
Yes. Yeah, just not enough turnovers, not enough takeaways, which is one of the things that was a key piece of being in those games earlier in the year. And when beating Miami and nearly beating Pitt. So that's because the safeties are the most important part. Like you cornerbacks are cornerbacks, but the safeties in this 3-3-5 are the most important part of the defense. Like you have to have your guys there. And then kind of going off what you were saying about adapting, like the entire new age of football is about throwing the ball and finding the most creative way to throw the ball. So if you're just going to stay in like a 4-3 and play base or just do the normal defense, you're probably going to get beat. And you just have to have something to offset that new age of spread it out, throw it around, which I think the 3-3-5 obviously it's a pretty good idea just based off what Iowa State has been able to do. Yeah, I think that's something you can view the defense like you view the entire team last year. Let the coach get his guys in here and then see what happens.
I thought we saw the defense improve.
Yeah.
I thought we saw the offense do this. I thought we saw the defense do that. By the end of the season, the defense was playing a better brand of football, I thought, than the offense by a fairly significant margin. Because, as we learned last year, you can run for 200 yards, and that's great, but it's really hard to control a game if you run for 200, but you pass for 150. Like, if you throw for 250 and run for 200, outstanding. But they lost the ability to do that somewhere along the way, and they ran for 200, but they didn't do the job that they needed to do passing the football.
Want to take a second and shout out to Mo. Mo said he was watching and he wanted to shout out. I don't know if he's still watching.
Mo Egger?
Egger.
Hi, Mo. Did he say on Twitter that he was watching?
Yeah, he replied to me on Twitter.
Ah, okay. Hi, Mo. I'm watching. I better get a shout out. That was 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, he's a ride or die. He's still watching. I'm not worried.
Okay. Mo's like me. He's not much of a sleeper. It's not a lot of sleep in the Egger.
Yay. There we go.
Not a lot of sleep in the Egger and Brendel households. Defense did play well. They just didn't have a playmaker to really flip a game. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Whether that's interceptions, whether that's sacks, whether that's, a guy that's out there racking up 15 tackles a night and just creating havoc all over the field. I think Jared Bartlett did as good as he could.
Yeah.
Physically in that. I mean, you could tell he was crushed.
He was pissed
when he walked into that. I don't know if he was pissed as much.
He literally approached the podium and just went the longest sigh ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a really, really accurate thing of just having the playmaker, because Dante's not expected to go get 10 sacks. Dante's
he's a nose tackle.
He's expected to disrupt plays and allow others to get sacks. Draw 2 offensive linemen and open stuff up for linebackers and defensive ends.
Yeah. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Not enough.
So there's a lot of pressure on Micah Coleman next year, especially coming off an injury. Like, a lot of people are going to expect him to be a key piece.
Coming off an Achilles.
Yeah.
Which is the hardest injury to recover from. What happened to Sorsby? Mechanics or just game planning and execution? All of it. Like, he didn't seem as comfortable in we talked about this a little bit last week. He didn't seem as comfortable in the pocket, like standing there. If you remember early in the season, boy, he took a couple shots because he was committed to the pocket and making the throw. Yeah. And we talked about this a ton at the beginning of the year. He's a rhythm guy. He needs volume and he needs rhythm. And once he got into the rhythm early in the season, you could see things were happening a lot more naturally for him. And then as the season wore on, the pass attempts went down. And the times that he really ripped off 7, 8, 9, 10 completions in a row just went away. And I think it's a combination of all of those things. Mechanics, footwork, game planning, execution, overthrowing some balls, guys not catching the ball when they did have an opportunity. Like, it was just, there wasn't one thing. That's kind of the hard part, Jack. When there's one thing, you can pick it out and say it's this. With this passing attack, it was a lot, man. There was a lot of stuff that went wrong that just didn't make a whole lot of sense because there was no rhyme or reason to any of it. Sat was regarded as a head of the game NIL guy when he was hired. Evan, he was regarded as a head of the game in NIL because Louisville is a massive, like Louisville's basically the number one Adidas school, number one or number two. And Adidas sunk a bunch of money into Louisville's NIL fund. So he's always been pro NIL, but they don't exactly there's a lot of talk today about a certain team spending $20 million and still can't beat Michigan. I don't know who that would be. They're not anywhere near that. Let's just say they're not anywhere in the ballpark of the upper echelon schools when it comes to NIL. They're very much, at best, middle of the pack in terms of Power 4 programs and probably below that. And that's not because Satterfield is pushing it down. It's because that's how this situation at UC is playing itself out right now. They need more, and we'll see what NIL looks like going forward. Now that revenue share is coming in, they're going to have a significantly larger pool to play with. And I know they're shuffling some things around in the athletic department that'll probably start coming out in the next month or two to get ahead of it and to be ready for revenue share when it gets here. They're going to be aggressive on that side of it. But in terms of just straight NIL, they're not an upper tier NIL school in terms of money. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Did people expect UC to jump in the Big 12 and run it? Eric, I don't think anybody expected that. But I do think people expected, okay, last year was a bad year. I think everybody looked at this year and said, get to a bowl game. And they fell short of that. And they fell short of that in a game they should have won against Pitt, a game they should have won against West Virginia. And if we're being perfectly honest, Keegan, TCU did not want anything to do with playing at Nippert Stadium on Saturday night in a snowstorm.
Yeah. It's
Go
also
ahead, you can say it. I was right. You can say it. They didn't want to play in the cold.
It's also it's not that people are mad that they're not running the Big 12. It's that they're losing in the worst ways possible. Blowing 21-point leads, really, really ugly turnovers, poor special teams gaffes. It's not that they're just, it's not, oh, we ran out of time at the end. If they had 2 more minutes or another minute on the clock, they'd have been able to go down and score. They're not always getting screwed over by referees, which, I don't know how you feel about that resetting of the play clock, but that was, again, weird. But
it happened twice, Keegan.
Yes.
It happened twice. The second time is getting talked about much more, where they did it right before the 2-minute warning and probably cost UC an extra 30 seconds or so. But if you remember on the series before that, TCU was 4th and 7, I think, 4th and 5, 4th and 7. And TCU kept their offense out on the field.
Yeah.
All the way until about 15 seconds on the play clock. And we thought, watching it, oh, they're going to run this down to 0, call timeout, and then punt. And instead, they ran their punt team on the field with 15 seconds on the play clock, and they reset it to 25 for no reason. That is not, you do not get to reset the play clock just because you decided to punt with 15 seconds left on the play clock. I don't understand either of those situations why the play clock was reset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just brutal just to lose the way that they're losing. And then, it's kind of just we got to, keep stacking days kind of thing. That's kind of the message that you're hearing after. So next year is important.
Look, there's a lot of people in that athletic department right now that are wondering what they're going to need to do this offseason to keep the fan base engaged. Because people are mad right now.
Yeah.
People feel like, especially going from 5-2 to 5-7 to end the season, people are upset. As they should be. If you're a fan and your team's 5-2 and you don't make a bowl, the fan base is going to be a little mad. Like that's something as an administrator you have to understand. And then now you have to navigate the offseason on keeping people bought in on a vision that the upward trajectory stalled, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 wins to 5 wins is tough to get a lot of people behind. 3 wins to a bowl game, a postseason berth, that is tangible proof of forward progress. And right now they're looking at having to try to continue momentum on a roller coaster that got stuck going up the hill, right? You like my analogy there?
A roller coaster got stuck going up the hill. Yeah. That's pretty good.
This is a great question, Corey G. Do you think 6-6 will be a success next year? No, I don't.
No.
I don't think the bar changes because you only won 5 games this year. And I say that because you were in position to win 8 or so. Like if things go right, you were in position to win 6, 7, 8 games. And I don't think that you reset the bar because you only won 5 this year. I think now next year, you got to get to 7. You got to get to 8. Like you have to show this staff. Let's face it, they're 8-16. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're 8-16 in 2 years here. 500 isn't going to cut it in terms of getting this fan base on board. Would you agree?
Yeah. It's also kind of going back to the earlier question of just like running the Big 12, what the expectations were. Why are people so mad? What's the signature win in 2 years? At Miami?
Well, I mean, it's Arizona State, Keegan.
But context.
They're first in the conference. They're
context.
still first.
Context. It's either at Miami or it's beating Arizona State. Miami's playing in the MAC championship. They had their starting quarterback, and it was on the road.
The MAC is the worst conference in college football.
Okay, so his signature win is
beating Arizona
State at home
with the caveat with the backup quarterback. But they still
one
won
of the
game.
Worst quarterbacks in all of Power 4. So it's also just like fans can't sit down and watch a game on TV on the road against Colorado, Kansas State, and Iowa State and think UC has a legitimate shot. So UC should win this game. Like they can't think that right now. They haven't been given a reason to think that.
Right.
And
I agree.
That's what it has to get to, or you won't have the fan base. Because especially UC was the only team this year, that didn't have like a crazy, holy crap, they beat that team. Like they played well. Houston beat Kansas State.
Arizona State.
Yeah.
Keegan, they're first. They're in first place in the conference.
The horse.
One of their losses. One of their 2 losses.
The horse's tongue is on the ground. You're beating it.
That's because you ignore it like it didn't happen.
I will.
They still had 21 other guys on the football field.
The rest of the season proved to me that I can ignore that game as a quality win, especially when you still almost lost.
They won.
They won.
They won. Connor, the stuff about the donor, there is some truth to it. I think people have blown that out of proportion. I think people have blown that out of proportion a little bit. I do think, look, this goes back to there was a relationship with Scott Satterfield from the coaching search after Tommy Tuberville. For those that don't know, Satterfield finished second to Luke Fickell in that coaching search. I think there were people that were comfortable with Satterfield that were still around the athletic department. They had a plane ready to go pick Scott Satterfield up the day they hired Luke Fickell to bring Scott Satterfield here to introduce him as the next head coach. Ultimately, they decided with Fickell, but in that process, there were people that got to know Scott Satterfield, that were comfortable with him, that liked him, and when it became apparent that they could get him, he had people on his side in the athletic department. That's where all of that came from. It's not as simple as donor X said hire the coach and athletic director said, yes, sir, please tell me the next thing that you would like me to do.
It's also, I know they wanted a Power 5 head coach to lead them into the Big 12.
That was part of it.
That was a priority.
I think it's a bad priority. Like, I get the thought process. That's something I would have disagreed with John Cunningham on. I know why he wanted that. I know the appearance of having somebody that is coached in a power conference handling your transition to a power conference is appealing because on paper it means they know what power conference players look like. Everybody knows what power conference, the difference between what a power conference player looks like and what a group of 5 player ultimately looks like. That's why the old staff was so good early in their tenure here, is because they knew what Power 5 players look like and they just got them to come to the group of 5. But
click on Craig Moore's comment, please. I can't click on it.
Remind me about ASU's 2 missed field goals late. Okay, remind Craig about the 7 missed field goals that Cincinnati had that could have changed outcomes this season. Like, we're not going to play that game. If I go pull up the schedule on GoBearcats.com, 30 years from now, you know what it's going to say? Cincinnati beat Big 12 championship competitor Arizona State. But I am always of the belief you go, if at all possible, you go with the younger up-and-coming guy looking to prove himself, as long as he has the right connections. And I think, let's be honest about it, one of the reasons that you want a sitting Power 5 head coach is because they will be able to bring connections for assistants with them that also have that level of pedigree. Where if you drop down a level, you bring in a group of 5 coach, a young up-and-coming guy, they're probably not going to have a wealth of knowledge to build a staff that consists of guys that have been in those positions before. So, I mean, look, people are mad. They have every right to be mad because this team fell short of its goals. And last year, it was easy to write off because it was easy to see that team was not talented enough. It was easy to see that play out on the field Saturday after Saturday. This team doesn't have that excuse because they played 12 games. There was really only 2 of them that got away from them. And both of those teams were in contention going into the final day to play in the Big 12 championship game. That's going to happen when you're a team working your way up through the middle, that occasionally one of the teams at the top is going to get you on their home field at night and have their way with you. And that happened twice. But the 10 other times they were in the game, they only won 5 of them. And that's not good enough. Period. Golish would have been the man. you have apparently not watched USF this year. If Boise State makes the playoff, does that open up a bowl game? I don't think so, because that just means that a team in the American that had been in that group of 5 spot is not going to be in that group of 5 spot. So then the team that wins the American fills the bowl instead of the Mountain West champion going into the playoff. So just semantics, Drem. It doesn't really change a whole lot. The only thing that changes is the only way Cincinnati gets into a bowl at 5-7 is if there are not enough teams with 6 wins. And then they go down to the 5-win teams and start picking from there. So I don't think that would have changed anything. Chances LSU, Wisconsin, and UC are in the market next season. LSU might be in the market in like a week.
60 million.
Look, man, they don't care down there. Keegan, they gave Jimbo $90 million to go away at Texas A&M.
I even think A&M has a different level of money than LSU.
LSU has a lot more money than you think.
I know maybe more than I think, but I think A&M has otherworldly money.
How many more years do I give Sat to prove he's the guy? I think all of it at this point depends on what next year looks like.
Yeah.
If next year is uninspiring and we're at this same point where they're fighting for bowl eligibility into week 13, then it's going to be tough. Then they're going to have to make some tough decisions because it's still going to be a significant buyout, but that would mean that there's 3 years without tangible progress in the win-loss department. Like, there's going to be a relevant conversation through this offseason that the team improved from a year ago, and they did. Like, I don't think that's debatable.
No, it's not.
The team got better from season 1. But we are in a win and loss, success or failure environment in sports, and that has to be part of the conversation. It can't just be our metrics say we got better, so that should be enough. Fans aren't going to buy that. Like, it doesn't matter if I buy it or not. The fans are the ones spending their money. You have to sell your fan base on the progress. And it's very difficult to do without the wins. Because you know what fans want to do, Keegan? They want to come to the game, they want to watch you win, and then they want to walk out of the stadium happy. You know what they don't want to do? You know what nobody wants to do? Spend a bunch of money to get pissed off. Like, that's...
And then, that's have to, fight with Louisville fans on Twitter.
Right.
I just think, before we move on to this, but like kind of going back to that, it's like year 1, you didn't have your guys. So then you can say, and it's with credibility, we need to get our guys in here, and then we can be judged fairly. If year 2 doesn't work after you have your guys, you can still use we have continuity. This whole group is together for the second year. Things should be better. If after that it's still not, you're running out of legitimate excuses to extend.
Well, what I would say is your reasons will have expired and turn to excuses. Like, there's a very fine line.
You're right.
Between reasons and excuses. Fans don't really give a shit about that line. And that's understandable. Like I said, you want to go to a game, you want to watch a game, you want to spend money on your program. When your program loses, it feels like an ineffective way to prioritize your funds. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Perspective on fan attendance. I thought fan attendance was good today.
30,000.
I thought that was about right. I mean, the upper corners weren't completely filled in. But given everything, I thought the fans, especially the home side behind the team, was full. The visitor side was not as full. and there were some empty spots, and you knew with the students being out of town or on Thanksgiving break that they weren't going to be as loud and raucous as normal, but it could have been much worse. Let's leave it there.
You could be Purdue.
I would love to go to.
Do you think you're happy with recruits and portal this offseason? Feels like it might be scary. Evan, again, this is a fan reaction. Remember, the fans reacted negatively to last year's class and hated everything about it. And it appears there are more than a handful of guys that are going to be ready to make significantly better contributions next year. Like, I thought your freshman class performed really well. So,
no.
Hi, Mo. Will Sorsby face no challenge to be starting QB this offseason? And will both teams be allowed to get butthurt if the other team plants a flag after the UC Nebraska tilted Arrowhead? Mo, you know as well as I do that money is a significant factor in these propositions. And Brendan Sorsby will get a lot of money to be Cincinnati's quarterback next year. Do I think they will spend a significant amount of money on another quarterback to come in and challenge him this offseason? I don't think that would be a prudent use of funds given the current situation. How's that for an answer? Can Samaj Jones advance and give him a run? That'll be up to Samaj Jones. From what I saw so far, I think he's got a ways to go to surpass Brendan Sorsby. He has talent, he has potential, but he didn't look like a guy that was ready to come in and be a Power 5, Power 4, whatever starting quarterback yet. I don't know how to answer the last part. Would anybody want to plant their flag on the Chiefs logo at Arrowhead Stadium?
I know Jamar Chase does.
Is Jamar Chase going to play for the Bearcats next year? That would be outstanding.
That would be awesome.
That would be really cool. He could spend $20 million on a roster and score 10 points on a 6-5 team. You're right.
Could be Purdue.
You're right. You wonder why people give you shit about the Indiana thing. Tonight is why.
I don't care. I'm going to be paying that university money until I die. I can talk about them.
That's right. I'm asking questions now. Was that a good enough answer for you, Mo? Contreras press conferences and Wes comments on his team's play versus Sat. Easygoing way. Look, Randy, if you go back and watch some of Wes's press conferences early, they weren't a whole lot different than Sat's, other than he said, I'm pissed off a lot more. But he knew he didn't have a good enough team. Now he knows he's got a really good team. He's going to continue to push those buttons in press conferences.
That was awesome. I don't think we ever talked about that.
The Prater throw?
No. Wes.
Oh.
I feel bad for anyone that paid to watch that. That's so awesome.
An 18-point win.
Yeah.
The Prater pass would have been awesome.
That would have been,
I guess it would have,
the moment of the year if he completed that.
Very much so. And probably would have resulted in a tie game.
Yeah.
And over if they would have went to overtime, Keegan Nickoson.
We'd still be there just dueling 2-point conversions right now at 1 a.m.
Do I think it's fair to compare Wes's team last year to this year's football team? In some ways, I would say probably the big difference, Lambig, And you could probably find enough reasons. I guess it's a lot harder to do in basketball because there's so many more possessions. It didn't feel like last year's team shot itself in the foot as much as they just weren't quite there yet. It felt like this team pissed away 3 or 4 wins with just head scratching. What the fuck was that moments?
Yeah.
It felt like Wes's team last year just wasn't quite good enough. It felt like Wes's team last year, the other team pretty much always had the best player on the floor. And that resulted in the scales tipping towards the other team more often than not. It feels like this football team, it was self-inflicted more often than not. And the coaching staff has to fix that. Like, we can sit here and we can individually go through and blame every player that made a mistake. We can blame Corey Kiner for the fumble today, or I will blame Jamoy Mays for going after that punt and touching it. You can blame Sorsby for the interception in the end zone, but ultimately the coach's responsibility is to have their players in a position to make the play and then have the play made. And far too often this year, especially over this last 5 games, they crumble. And that is the responsibility of the coaches.
Wes's team last year lost in very normal basketball fashion much of the time. 2 games stick out.
Guy finishes a play, yeah.
2 bad games stick out, and it's at West Virginia and at Oklahoma. But
the Oklahoma game was a unmitigated disaster. That team was down. Like, that team was bad. Yeah, that team was bad. Like, they should have beat that team.
West Virginia was John Newman got hurt down the stretch. You didn't have him. And also the Victor Locken shot, like with 30 seconds left, is pretty bad too. But West could also say, hey, I beat BYU on the road. I beat Texas Tech on the road. I beat TCU at home. Yeah. I beat some pretty good teams last year, which obviously there's more games, so there's more opportunities, but he could still say that. That's just not what this football team does at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's Sat talked about it. I'll give him credit after the game. We have to look at the way we do everything because our guys weren't ready to make game-winning plays. Players have to make the plays, but coaches also have to have them ready to make the plays. And for whatever reason, too many times this year, the moment got big and the play got small. And that falls at the head of the coaching staff. So they've got to get in there and fix it.
Yeah, I talked with Bob Favorite about this at Montgomery Inn on Tuesday because he asked a good question about it the show before. But you just have to get to a point where you go out there knowing that you're going to dominate the team. Like, I feel like that was a lot of what the last regime kind of how they carried themselves. No?
Yeah. I feel like in the American Athletic Conference, yes. Yeah. That is not going to happen in this league. What you have to get your players to do is understand this game is going to come down to one score. There's going to be a play or two that flip it one way or the other. We can't be the team that makes the bad play every Saturday night. You know what I mean? Like, that's the mentality you have to have is we're going to figure out a way to win. And this team did not ever carry themselves that way. Like, even in some of the games they won, and it cost them the Pitt game, like where they got up and then they just held on for dear life and hoped that the game didn't slip away. The Pitt game did slip away. They held on to a couple others, but it never felt like we're going to make that. Like, did they ever put the nail in the coffin on a team is kind of what I'm getting at, Keegan. We're like, yeah, I guess that's the one that they did. But like in the Pitt game, if they go down and score one more touchdown, Pitt's not going to touch the ball enough to win. if they don't turn it over that last time against West Virginia, even with all the mistakes they made, they were going to go down the field and win that game. Fully believe that. They had all the momentum. The offense had started to click and started to find a rhythm. And then Sorsby has the backwards pass that they scoop and score for a touchdown, and that ended that. But of course, you want the mentality that you're going to go in and dominate, right? But I think the reality is in this league, you have to understand we are going to have to be the team that finds a way to win. What did Arizona State do this year in a lot of close games? Found a way to win. What did BYU do in a lot of close games? Found a way to win. What did Cincinnati do? Find a way to lose. So I don't think you're wrong. Like like that's the mentality you have to have in the American. Right now, where this program is at, they're not going to be in a position to go kick everybody's ass in this league. They're just not, the roster's not there. Like they're not in that realm. But boy, you damn sure better find a way to go out and win some of these one-score games, because half of the games in the conference all season, half of them were decided by one score. You're going to be in a shit ton of one-score games in this league. If you don't figure out a way to go win them, you're going to be sitting here at 5-7. And 3-6 in the 3-6. Did they win 3? Was that it?
3-6, yeah.
3-6 in the conference. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Terrible.
That's terrible.
Terrible.
You got anything else? We didn't even go through individual. Corey Kiner, awesome senior day. Outside of the fumble, 23 attempts, 110 yards, just under 5 a carry. He got a touchdown. Had the long run of 46. He sure would have liked it to have been 47. The guy grabbed his foot and tripped him up. He did his best to keep his balance. He didn't get there. Joe Royer passes Travis Kelce for receptions in a season by a tight end. So it was good for him. They finally completed a pass over 20 air yards. That's the first time in a while, was it not? Or did they have one against Arizona State? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Defensively, we did get to see the young guys quite a bit. Stanks had 6 tackles. Monte Whedon had 3 tackles. Simeon Coleman had 3 tackles. So, some of that youth movement is showing up on the field. But Sabor had a tackle. I don't know. You got anything else?
Wide receiver position needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Xavier
Especially you're
Henderson.
losing Henderson.
I mean, I'm just talking about him. He was just extremely inconsistent.
And he's gone. That's my point.
Yeah.
You're going to have
started out catches 7, 6, 10 weeks 1 through 3. And then the next 9 weeks, 2, 7, 2, 8, 1, 8, 1, 4, 3.
Is that was somebody's phone number? Was I supposed to be writing that down?
Yeah.
But you're going to have to replace him. Like, he's not coming back. They're going to need to hit on a wide receiver or 2 in the portal to be a number 1.
Tony Johnson coming back is, I think, pretty large, just to kind of have that glue guy. But you need a number 1, and you need a big-bodied red zone threat. That was another thing where just having that guy that you can just throw the ball up to in a one-on-one, makes your job a lot easier as a quarterback in the red zone.
Sure.
Because then when you have that guy and someone puts 2 on him, you can hit somebody else. But
You got anything else?
I think I'm good.
I don't either. We're still up over 100, so I don't ever like leaving with that many, with triple digits in the room. But we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, and Barry Jackson or any of the 2024 receivers step up next year. I mean, you hope you get Tyron Smith back, who did a lot of good things leading up to the season, and then just got dinged up, and we never saw it. So
I'd watch out for Cale Woodburn. I feel like he was just that next level speed guy that Tyron Smith was supposed to be.
At least a guy that can maybe take the top off at times when you put him in.
Yeah.
Barry Jackson got to get better. He was, they tried to give him some run this year and he was inconsistent. So got to get better. Got to get more out of him. Got to get more out of whoever's going to be that number one. I'm sure Sterling Burkhalter is going to get a chance. You would assume they'll bring somebody in out of the portal. Dakari Anderson, didn't see him flash as much as Woodburn. So that's going to be one of those. He's going to have to show it in the spring and in the summer through the offseason that he's ready to jump in and make a contribution. The thing I wonder about, those two guys are kind of the same body-wise.
They love Elijah Jones.
Yeah.
And
he was
him.
the less talked about one of that bunch.
Yeah.
He's a little bigger, though, a little more physical. Like Dakari and Kale
junior.
Yeah. Dakari and Kale were thin.
Dakari had more than Kale.
That's because Kale was a toothpick.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. You don't expect Cale Woodburn to come here and put on weight all of a sudden. Like, he's going to be a toothpick his entire career.
Right.
But a fast one who can catch.
But, I mean, Tyler Scott, Tyler Scott put on good muscle, and he was a smaller guy.
Yeah.
Trey Tucker was always kind of a freak. Like, his body didn't make any sense for as strong as he was, as little as he was.
Punked Kyle Hamilton. That's all that matters.
Had a touchdown Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
Go Trey. Good kid. Love him. This stuff is therapeutic to me, so I know I appreciate it. Thanks, Griff. That's what we're here for. It's therapy session. Look, there's some other places out there. They're going to come on here. They're going to yell and scream. They love to talk about us. They're going to yell and scream, and they're going to be all up in arms. We're going to talk rationally through these things because we're rational. We don't get irrational here, but sometimes we do.
Yeah.
Just what it is. That's just a little to the people that like to talk about us all the time. All right. That's going to wrap it up. I need to go to bed. It's late. Keegan, thanks for sitting in.
Absolutely.
Aaron's still probably on his way back to Athens.
Insane.
That's the Aftermath, brought to you by Mio's Pizza, live from the Cincy Light Studios, right here on BearcatJournal.com.